Welcome to the Bitcoin Business Podcast put on by Sovereign. I'm your host, Brandon Karpeles. Today, I have with me a very special guest, none other than Richard Greaser from the Bitcoin Bugle or the Bugle Weekly, if you're looking for a podcast. And we're going to do our part to get everyone to their 40 hours this week. Maybe we'll just record like 20 hours straight and just get like half of everyone's work done for the week. What do you think about that?
I've been thinking about doing a marathon podcast. I feel like it just sounds awful, but at the same time it sounds fun to do a 40-hour straight podcast. I'm thinking that'd be a good event to do somewhere at some point.
Well, they had like those dance marathons and stuff in college, and then people would just collapse at the end of it. We could just do this. You really got to make sure you stay hydrated. That's key. Leg cramps, those can happen sitting in the same chair for a long time. So you really got to physically come in prepared, but I think we could pull it off.
Yeah. I mean, like, there would be so many topics to talk about on a 40-hour podcast. It's got to happen at some point. I mean, we're gonna do the marathon 40-hour podcast at some point.
Yeah, well, and then it'll be like the 4 minute mile. Everyone will say, "Oh, it could never be done," and then Roger Bannister does it, and it's everyone and their grandma's running a 4 minute mile. Everyone and their grandma will be doing a 40-hour podcast after someone breaks the barrier.
Yeah,
it's really.
I'm sure it's been done before, but nobody's done a Bitcoin podcast for 40 hours that I know of.
No, well, certainly not one worth listening to either. Otherwise, we probably would have heard about it. So. We need to tear down the glass ceiling here.
Absolutely.
So, Richard, do you prefer to go by Richard or Dick, by the way?
Either works for me. Yeah.
Okay, good. I like that. Too many people are too pretentious with their name these days, so that's good. So you obviously write. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. For those that don't know, Richard is one of the authors and contributors over at the Bitcoin Bugle, which how would you describe Bitcoin Bugle? I kind of describe it as Bitcoin satire, but I feel like it's more than that because I feel like there's a lot of truth, a lot of profundity, and other things that are actually beneficial and things for people to take seriously, along with the fun and jokes we have. How would you frame it?
Well, the way I'd frame it is we're real news in a parallel reality. So in the parallel reality, we are a premier news agency competing with the New York Times. And we're just reporting on the most important stories, which happen to be Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's the most important thing going on in the world right now. And yeah, that's what happens when a news agency doesn't just bend over to the CIAs. They actually report on things that matter. I know that's very unusual. Like, people are accustomed to just reading news that doesn't matter, reading psyops. But in the parallel reality, all our stories are real. But in this reality, which is very similar, they come off as satirical. That's the way I would describe it.
Can you even really call it a parallel reality? Because that implies there's two different realities. I would argue that there's just a completely made up world that we're living in.
Yeah, a lot of people think that reality is subjective. This is what the institution of journalism has really done to the general population, the education system. They think that reality is based on feelings, that it's subjective, that you can determine your worldview based on how you feel instead of looking at what's actually real. And it's a bummer. It's a bummer. But yeah, we've got tons of people in this reality living in parallel realities, experiencing the world in a very different way. Some people are really unhappy right now. Some people are having a great time. I'm having a great time listening to a lot of Bitcoin podcasts, going on a lot of Bitcoin podcasts. I think it's just when you are in touch with reality, and you're able to make good decisions for yourself, for your business, for your family, just in your life in general, you're going to be able to feel better. And I think a lot of people are afraid of coming to grips with what's actually happening in the world because they think that if they admit what's happening is happening, they're going to have a bad time. It's like, sure, you're initially going to have a bad time, but then you're going to start taking actions, which are going to make you feel better instead of just being a worthless, useless pawn in the system, just getting taken advantage of.
Well, do you think that's a question I always have is why is it so hard for people to break out of this CIA funded media? It's so blatantly obvious. Even before I got into Bitcoin, even before I would say I went, completely down the rabbit hole of realizing everything is just a narrative and a psyop. I always was like, the news is a joke. It's laughable. I shouldn't be basing my life off of the things I'm being told. And I feel like there's a cohort of society that is simply unable to accept the fact that what they see on their television isn't real. And to your point, they're leading such a depraved and pathetic life, accepting this as their reality. Why is it just people's inability to admit they were lied to, they were wrong, they've been living their life by sort of a set of principles that never actually existed? What do you think it is that makes it so hard for people to detach from this completely insane worldview of just destruction and endless bickering and hate your neighbor and all of this crap that we're subjected to 24/7?
Um, well, it's a really complicated question. I've been trying to understand that one
Me too.
for a long time, and I think part of it has to do with individuals' personalities. I think certain personalities are a little bit more uh, prone to rejecting the system or being against it. I think there's a predisposition, uh, and I don't really know what determines personalities. There's lots of theories on it. I think people have been trying to figure this out for a long time. Like some people believe in like astrological signs. Some people believe everything is nurture. Some people believe that it's genetic. Some people, I don't know what it is, but for me, the catalyst for change was pain, and the system wasn't working. I think that's a large portion of the population. Like, unfortunately, a lot of people don't make decisions just based on their moral beliefs. They make it out of like comfort or necessity. But like at the same time, a lot of people are being subjected to a lot of change, or sorry, pain, and they're not changing, they're not adapting. So that's not the case for everybody. I just think there's probably like 80% of the population, and like people don't like to hear this, probably because the majority of them are NPCs. And they get offended when it's pointed out to them that it's like, oh no, you're not making decisions of your own volition. You're not um, making decisions rationally. You're not even really a moral person. You're just responding to stimulus. Like people don't like to hear that, but we know this. We know this is the case over and over again. Like most of us were, going through school, we were taught about atrocities that happened in history where the majority of the population supported it. And, the reason why it's important to learn that is because we all have the capacity to be that NPC, but like everybody learning that history doesn't relate to the people committing the atrocities. And I think something that was a little bit different for me in that experience was I was really concerned that I was going to be that person,
Well, look at
that I was going
COVID.
to
I
be the
mean,
bad guy.
we just lived through that. We had 80% of society that, to your point, they were like an amoeba. They were just reacting to stimuli. They didn't even know what they were doing. They just, to your point, they wanted it to be easy. They wanted to go along, go. People put things in their arms because they didn't want to tell their boss maybe they were uncomfortable with something. I mean, if they were yelling at people to put masks on while they were taking theirs off to eat in a restaurant 10 feet away from someone. I mean, the whole thing was so ridiculous. I mean, we just lived through a real life experience of people doing exactly what you're talking about.
And it was global.
Yeah.
Almost universally happened in every country.
Yeah. So it has to be something in human nature where we just have, but again, this gets back to, the question of was that able to take place? Was sort of human nature able to take over because of this controlled media, because of this constant psyop, this constant narrative? Would that have ever been possible 150 years ago, where you couldn't coordinate communication quite the way the sort of apparatus of the media is today?
Well, yeah, I mean, the majority of people are retarded because the information they're getting is incorrect, and they think the information is correct that they're getting. Like it's not a for everybody. Like there's a lot of stupid people, but a lot of these people are completely retarded. They're very intelligent individuals. They're just the inputs that they're receiving are incorrect, and so when you present them with real information and evidence, it creates a crisis for them. To be able to accept the evidence, they have to surrender their faith into these institutions that they believe in, whether it's the media institutions, whether it's government, and a lot of them, their livelihoods are dependent on these institutions. And this is where you really see people's moral character. I think COVID was a great test of people's moral character, because it took a lot of, like, one of my biggest regrets in COVID was not getting arrested for refusing to follow the rules.
Sadly, I kind of agree with you.
It was bullshit. It was all bullshit. I knew it was bullshit. We all got vindicated to some degree. And I just regret not fighting it harder, because the destruction is just so severe. Children committed suicide because they were subjected to so much pressure, and they experienced so much psychological damage, and the consequences of that are going to be very real and are very real going forward, which is that you're going to have a super poorly adjusted group of individuals, taking over society. Like, the reason why you take care of children is because they take care of you when you get old. It's in your self-interest to take care. It is incredibly, it's one of the primary things of importance, is to take care of the future generation, to educate them to be effective individuals. Like, and this is the problem with the boomers, is they care so much more about retaining their power and control. Like these I don't know why, like, people like Trump and Biden even bother running for office at that point, because they're fucking old and they're rich, and they should be like hanging out, diddling kids on Epstein Island instead of,
that was 30 years ago, man. Come on.
Yeah, like they should be enjoying themselves and letting the younger generation take over. But they did such a poor job of raising like, I mean, you probably experienced this. I experienced this. Like, growing up, the boomers were just hurling insults about how stupid and entitled the younger generations were. It's like, you motherfuckers are the ones that raised it. Like, who are the stupid, entitled motherfuckers? Like, where did they get that from? It's your fault. And I don't want to be like that. I don't want the future generations to experience what I experienced. And it's like my mission in life to ensure that I'm not complicit in that, and that I'm actually participating in something productive that trying to set up the future generation so that I'm not planning on going and ever hanging out on Epstein Island, but I'd like to fish in retirement and write books and just hang out.
Well, what if you got what if they cleaned up Epstein Island and then you could fish off of it? You still wouldn't go there?
No,
Well,
I, the karmic
the
the
juju is
demonic
just
karmic
too bad.
residue is so gross.
Yeah. The juju is too bad. It's just like Germany, It's just like there's just dark spirits hanging over that country like forever. I don't know what it is with that part of the world, but it just seems like evil hangs over there for thousands of years. But to your point, yeah, I mean, you brought up this point of who are the people that raise the kids. You raise them, and then you hear all of this. Oh well, it's the internet or it's social media or it's like, what? How were you so out of touch with your own children that you let them cut their wiener off or cut their tits off and become something else? Like that, all the buck stops back with you. You allowed all of that to happen, and I say this not as a sort of political philosophy or a psychological analysis, but to get this back to what we're trying to do with Bitcoin. To your point, I'm I'm not going to let the next generation be like our generation, just abused at the hands of the boomers. And yeah, guess what? Our generation does suck. We are lazy. We are entitled. But guess what? There's also a lot of stuff the boomers did to push us in that direction. They have absolutely no idea that they were beneficiaries of the fiat monetary system. They were first to the spigot. They are literally the Cantillon class, the entire generation. You cannot argue that. That's just math. And that has a lot of trickle down effects. And when you aren't raising your kids to understand these things, when you aren't raising the next generation to say, hey, we were the beneficiaries of this abortion of a monetary system. And here's how we're going to set you up. Here's how I took advantage of that to set you up into the future. Here's how you need to go into the future. I mean, that's just a dereliction of duty in not only financially, but sort of an outlook on life that, hey, um, we had it really good. And the reason we complain about nostalgia is because things are decaying and getting worse. And the government overreach is getting worse. The money printing is getting worse. And things are getting worse, and it's not because of you. It's because no one's doing anything about it. And the system continues to centralize, and we continue to print more money. And our asset values continue to go up. And we continue to, take another vacation to Mykonos and not fund, not help you out with a starter home and all sorts of different stuff. And listen, it's a massive balance. I find it very difficult as a Bitcoiner as to how am I going to raise my children and distribute my wealth amongst them, and it's a hard balancing act. But certainly the right answer is not teach them anything and just show up 30 years later and be like, oh, how's it going? I'm yeah, sorry. And that's a big part of our responsibility as Bitcoiners. And you talk about the 40 hours per week, but really what the 40 hours per week is an exit out of that system. It's living in this different reality, like you talk about. But you have to start instilling that reality into the next generation, into the people that are to come. So we don't have a generation of dunces like ours, and that don't know what's going on, that were taught nothing, that were and I don't mean this personally. I'm actually very happy with my parents, and they did a great job, and I love them dearly. But this is again speaking in generalities overall. That our obligation as Bitcoiners is to step into this different reality, absorb as much of it as we can, and pass that along to those that come after us.
Totally. Like I think our primary job is to be examples. And I think this is really important for Bitcoin podcasters to understand is that we have played a pretty serious role in changing history. We've played a role in shaping perception. We've played a massive role in bringing Bitcoin to a point of essentially mass adoption. Like that was our role that we played in it, because nobody else was really promoting it. The mainstream media was attacking it. The podcasters were the tip of the spear, in this endeavor and promoting these ideas. And I think it's important not to be victims. Like, sure, the boomers handed us a bad situation, but like, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to do something. If you're an individual that is, awake and aware of what's going on, you understand that monetary debasement is incredibly destructive, and not the issue isn't that the wrong guys in political office. The issue is that the whole system is corrupt top to bottom. You understand that you can start taking a real active role in your life, in your community, in this ecosystem. And you can begin building things and doing cool things. Whatever you're interested in, you can start doing it. You have the freedom to do that. And you have the freedom to be an example to not only for your kids, but, for other people. Like, you're hopefully, as a result of it, adopting that philosophy and mindset, you're going to start having a ton of success in your life. You're going to get cool opportunities. You're going to feel good. People around you are going to feel super shitty, super powerless, and they're going to look at you and you're having a good time doing the things that you want to. And they're going to look at that and want that. And I think, there's a major shift in perspective that's helpful to have, that I think is important to have, which is that the things that we believe in are actually based in substance. And we don't have to go out there and evangelize to people and beg them to just come to grips with reality. If we have enough conviction in this thing that we have, we can just show people, show them through our success. They'll eventually bend the knee and come to us when everything breaks for them. Like just today is absolutely incredible. Like, Vanguard's shilling people a 70-30 stock bond portfolio. What a bunch of fucking idiots. Who the fuck is buying bonds other than stable coins? Bonds are for stable coin companies. They're not for individuals to own.
It's insane to me that these portfolios even still exist. It's criminal. The hilarious thing is the 60-40 trade wasn't even a positive trade. When priced in gold over 40 years, like the whole 60-40 portfolio. And granted, a bunch of that is because the gold price run up recently, but if you follow that portfolio, you could have just held gold for the 40% of your portfolio for 50 years and done better. I mean, the whole thing is completely ridiculous. It never covered inflation, and at the end of the day, you had to pay 15% on your quote unquote gains anyways. So you're right back to where you started. It is criminal that these institutions have not woken up. Did you see that report that came out and it's just a survey or whatever, and but I think it was from Bloomberg. 75% of fund managers don't have a penny allocated to Bitcoin. Did you see that?
That's really cool. 25% of fund managers. That's like, you talked about that a few years ago. That would have been unheard of. That's insane. That's such a big number.
I mean, it is true. That is the flip side of that, is that the growth from people that actually do have it is incredible, and eventually it'll be 100%. It is just shocking. I was more trying to sort of illustrate the point that, like, yeah, that you were talking about. Of eventually, these people will bend the knee. They're going to resist for as long as they can, and then they're going to sit there and watch everything crumble around them. Things get worse, and then they're just going to have to go do it because and then you're going to have someone like Vanguard who is just, who knows? Maybe that day never comes. Maybe they're stuck out on that island forever. But yeah, 99% of everyone else will come around eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening so quick. This stuff's happening so quick. I don't think we have to spend too much energy being upset that other people don't get it, because it's coming. It's I think it's really time to dial in and build and try to stake your claim in the system that's coming. Many of us have a massive advantage in this, that we understand this technology. And like, one of the craziest things I saw, I had a friend who was at a Cantor Fitzgerald event. They had Scottie Pippen talking about uh, tokens, completely incredibly stupid, talking to these extremely wealthy and powerful individuals, and they're just eating it up because they don't understand any of it. Guess what? You're significantly more advantaged than these guys in understanding where the world's going if you listen to 40 hours of Bitcoin podcasts a week. That's a huge advantage. You're going to be valuable in the future economy and in so many ways if you just understand the basics of some of the stuff. If you know the right businesses to work with, if you know the right podcasts to listen to, if you know the right wallets to use, just all of that stuff is incredible. Like I there's tons of people right now that are losing a lot of money to like phishing attacks and stuff like that. They're just unbelievable amounts of money, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Also, bondholders. Or are you considering that? Are you considering U.S. Treasuries a phishing attack?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, everybody's losing money to debasement for sure. Not underperforming inflation, but these people, they that don't really know what they're doing, that have a lot of money, that are just taking all their money and putting it on Coinbase or putting it on a hardware wallet because you listen to the right podcast and maybe you heard about a different strategy, or an organization that can help you secure your funds. Like, at a certain point, it doesn't make any sense to have $100 million in Bitcoin on a Blockstream Jade. But there's people doing that. They have no idea what they're doing. They listen to like one podcast. They listen to Simply Bitcoin, and Nico said to self custody your funds, and they're like, okay, and they had Blockstream Jade as a sponsor or whoever, and they did that, and they're in such a precarious situation. But like, if you have been paying attention, you you could get paid a lot of money by just giving them just some basic information on how to be a little bit more effective in securing those funds.
I mean, that's effectively what we're trying to do with Sovereign, is help people navigate this, to your point, so they don't end up with $100 million on a Blockstream Jade, and don't know where they put their paper portion of had no backups, have absolutely no diversification in terms of hardware products, in terms of signatures, in terms of key setup. I mean, that's it. Exactly to your point, like us at Sovereign, we're so far ahead of the curve. We have all this information. We have this incredible benefit of knowing all this stuff. And for honestly, like a pittance compared to what you're talking about generational wealth. And you could give us a fraction of that to basically make sure you don't end up exactly like you're talking about. Just down some terrible hole in some precarious situation. You end up in a California wildfire. You have no recourse, and you don't even know why. You listen to a person, but they didn't give you good advice, and it's going to be so critical that people actually heed good advice, get it from people with integrity, people that actually care, and then that's a massive advantage for you, because you get to get on the shoulders of someone who went before you, and you have to do 1/10 of the work. I mean, it's just an incredible opportunity for people that want to take advantage.
Yeah. Is it like one of the lessons that I've learned in life is paying somebody that knows how to do something is sometimes the most effective thing. Like you can learn anything you want on the internet, but like if you find somebody that is proficient or has mastered a skill set, if you pay them to teach you, the amount of time saved is
Oh, gosh.
and money
Yeah.
is incredible because you don't have the context oftentimes if you're trying to learn things like for example I'm learning how to sing right now. That's something I've been taking singing lessons, and I've been working with a couple people, but one of the individuals is Noah Grumman from Stardust, and she's legitimately one of the best singers in the world.
She's incredible. Yeah.
She and she's like taught a lot of people how to sing too. Like one of her side things is she runs a choir called Hell Score that she has perform with her. And I sit down with her, you know, and do these singing lessons, and it's just it's such an accelerator. Whereas I could have you know, probably been on the internet for like 100 hours to get what I could get from her in an hour, but then I'm also wading through a bunch of other bullshit, and I can't decipher the difference between what's real and what's bad because I don't know. I don't have the context. It's incredible.
It is. It's truly amazing. And I mean, it's just example after example of this. And it's like, I always say, I wish someone tapped me on the shoulder in like 2017, 2018, and was like, hey, give me 5K and I'll show you how to do Bitcoin right. Like that, looking back at that would have been the best $5,000 I've ever spent in my life. And instead I, sent 7-figure Sats amounts to blank addresses and didn't know how to set up a node. And I mean, the list is just endless of time I spent trying to figure everything out on my own. That honestly, I should have been doing something better. But I went through it on my own, and okay, that's the path I took. But I don't think I necessarily understand it any better. Or even now, who really cares if you understand it? It's the getting the utilization out of it. Like I don't need to know how the hammer was made. I just need to punch a nail in somewhere. And I think there's so many of these, as you famously talk about, these purity tests of, have you done it the right way? And it's like, well, I just want to be able to use the tool the way that it benefits me and makes my life better. And that's what I'm going for. I'm not trying to be some. I don't need to know how the code works to verify a Bitcoin transaction that I received is actual Bitcoin that's connected to the block.
The people that do know and are able to verify that are incredibly valuable though, because like one of the things that
For
we're
sure.
seeing today, which is really concerning, like I think it's important to some degree to know how things work, or at least to work with people that know how things work. Like you might not you can't be an expert in everything, or be very informed on every single topic, but to defer into qualified people that are is incredibly important, because you know what we're seeing is like all of our, like, why is KYC bad? KYC is bad because one, it's a two-tiered system where the ruling class doesn't have to follow it. They can skirt by it, but they subject all the lower class individuals to it, and all their information gets uh circulated online. So like pretty much everybody's social security number, which banks for some reason use as like a identifier of an individual, are out there in the open. It's so easy to sim swap, attack people. People don't know how to judge. And I'm not like an expert in it. I'm a journalist, but like, just watching these things for a little bit, listening to Bitcoin podcasts, like KYC is incredibly dangerous. It's a lot more dangerous than not having it. And they talk about like they need KYC to go after the cyber criminals, but in reality, they're just enabling them essentially. And I've got theories on that, but we're watching these entire systems be built that are just completely insecure, top to bottom. And like what a lot of people like to do is they like to outsource everything. They outsource all their data collection and systems to these third parties, which, if you've been in Bitcoin for a while, you've used any sort of service, you've been compromised in one way or another. It's typically a third party. And like you can mitigate that a lot if you actually know how things work and can build them. And I think a lot of the people that have been early adopters of Bitcoin are really people that they understand software. They want to learn how things work. They're fascinated with this technology. They've actually gone through and verified things. They look at code bases. Like I'm not like I hang out on GitHub sometimes, but I'm not really an individual that goes and verifies everything on GitHub. But I know people that are like that, and they're so valuable to be around. Like, you have to like question what they're saying, but like they are so important to have. Because sure, I can vibe code, but I don't understand any of the underlying stuff going on there. And if I'm building a business around using customer data and collecting personal information from people, and I'm just vibe coding stuff that I don't understand, that's a huge vulnerability. And that's like everybody. That's like Xfinity or Comcast just had that massive hack, and they were storing everybody's passwords in plain text, which is super stupid. And so
I had to change mine
majority
4 times.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, why is the internet becoming less and less secure? You think that over time these systems would get better and better, but they're in a lot of ways they're getting worse and worse and worse. And there's really an opportunity, which is it all comes down, I think, to personal responsibility. That's the big shift that has to happen in order to be successful in the future that we're going into. Is like you got to own your life. You got to own your mind. If you don't, you're going to get wrecked. And it's really empowering. It's empowering to know how things work. Like I've been learning the electric guitar, or just guitar in general. And one of the first things I did was I went and learned about how the guitar works, the electric guitar. It's fascinating. I don't think probably 90% of the people that learn the guitar don't ever bother to do that. But I think having that mindset with things of like just diving into the technologies of the things that you're using are cool. Like your car mechanics are becoming more and more useless, and you have to question things that they're doing. This has been my experience, is like, because if you don't understand the systems that they're working on, like, I take my car to the mechanic out of convenience. I can change my oil. I choose not to, because it's more convenient not to get my hands dirty. I could spend more time Bitcoin podcasting or listen to podcasts, but like, you have to double check their work, and they'll try and lie to you. They'll tell you stupid things. Like, I had a mechanic one time tell me that my coolant was empty and that all I had was antifreeze. Or wait. All I had was water. No, he said all I had was water. I needed more coolant. It's like, the water is the coolant, you idiot. You put distilled water in your engine with antifreeze so it doesn't freeze. That's the coolant. And so he's lying to me. And because I have like a basic amount of knowledge, I can call him out on his bullshit. Of like, like a lot of people would be like, oh wow, put more coolant in, and charge me an arm and a leg. That's really bad. But
it's like our medical
there's all sorts
industry
of
now too. I mean, you just once you know that they're operating from a completely captured point of view, they've never read a study, they don't actually know what they're talking about, they don't know how to diagnose you. They just give you a pill that is purported to mask the symptoms, but doesn't even necessarily do it. And I agree with you that it is important to understand how things work. And the expertise is important. To have people that are experts in these things is super important. And we do need, that's sort of like the base layer, right? You got to have the base layer of expertise, and not everyone needs to be an expert in everything. I guess, what I was saying more is, let those people that are experts at the bottom, those people that we do need them, and we do need the experts, but learn from them, lean on them, and let them be your guide, as opposed to, trying to 100% do everything on your own. Like, use the crutch, and then get yourself started. And I mean, I think every Bitcoin podcast listener can relate to this. It's that you learn the basics, you get the simple stuff down, you figure out how to do cold storage, and then you really start going down the rabbit hole. Then you start learning about a lot of the more technical stuff. Then you start figuring out how it works. But it's like, get that base layer of understanding from an expert, from someone that knows what they're doing, and then you have a nice foundation to go from. You're not building cracked foundations. You're building a solid foundation, and then from there you can really increase your expertise and your knowledge from that starting.
Totally. Yeah, and I think being able to recognize the value of individuals that understand things is really, really, really important. Being able to gauge that, like, one of the common tropes that I've seen, through the years, is people just abusing IT professionals, like yelling at them, "My computer doesn't work, fix it," and just treating them like they're dirt. And it's like, IT individuals in a lot of these systems and companies are some of the most important people working there, because they're making sure everything works. Uh, and whenever you encounter an individual, you have the opportunity to learn from them in a way that's really, really helpful. Like, if you, all you need to do is turn your computer on and off, and that'll save you hours and hours of time, of arguing with your computer or calling somebody else to turn your computer on and off. Like, that's a pretty useful thing to learn. And so, instead of treating this person like they're dirt because you're frustrated because you're trying to complete a task, like, ask them questions like, what's their background, how did they learn this stuff? Maybe they're just some sort of goofball that was like really interested in computers when they were a kid, and was a little bit autistic and socially awkward, and so instead of playing sports ball, they played with computers growing up, and maybe they have learned some really cool things, and you don't know what Kubernetes is, or you know, uh, the difference between, Python and PHP, but they do, and they can explain it to you. You might not understand it, but it'd be, you're learning something. And I think it's important to, be able to determine, where uh, value is, in other people's expertise. And that's like the thing that I like about podcasting is you have the opportunity to ask people questions and to learn from them. And I tell people that they should start Bitcoin podcasts. And like, the primary reason why is you can get all these people that are really smart across the industry and have a conversation. You get access to people by just having an RSS feed or posting a video on YouTube. You know what I mean? Whereas they're not just going to pick up your phone calls for the sake of picking up a phone call. Like, it really is a good networking opportunity.
I mean, even beyond that, just doing this show, I've learned so much about industries I had no idea about. That
Yeah.
I got into them. I had Ben Justman on here, and he sent me down the wine rabbit hole. Now I know so much about what low intervention wine is, what natural wine is, different elevations, all this stuff. I had Oshi on here, and he was talking about sourcing pecans, and I went down like a nut rabbit hole. And I just had Brian on from Huddle House, and we were talking about architecture and design and building and all these things that it's just so cool. I talk to these people, I get to pick their brain, but just because I'm doing this and interviewing them, I get to learn about all these things I would have never otherwise learned about. No chance.
Dude, Ben Justman's the man.
Ben is the man. Shout out, Ben. Much love. Dude's incredible. His wine's incredible. I have yet to give it to anyone that has said a bad word about it, and people are so shocked by it too. They're like, "Oh my gosh, this is out of where in Colorado? What do you they make wine in Colorado?" And, yeah, and he has a great outlook on everything and his work ethic and what he values. And fantastic guy.
Yeah, he's got a hot girlfriend that he's vlogging about on Noster.
I did. I saw he vlogged. I didn't watch the vlog, so I'll have to defer to your judgment on that.
Dude, if there's a guy that deserves a hot girlfriend, it's definitely Ben Justman.
I was talking to Ben when me and my family went out. We visited his vineyard, and he said he was doing like crazy ski runs with her and all sorts of wild adventures and stuff. So I was like, man, she's more impressive than I am. So yeah, good for Ben. Nice job, Ben.
Bitcoiners deserve hot girlfriends and wives. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, right? We gotta better our lives. We gotta procreate. We gotta bring the next generation in, not only morally and ethically, but aesthetically as well. We can't have a bunch of people of Walmart walking around our circles, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like the fiat world right now, and like the Ozempic people. They just look weird. Like Mike Brock, he's an Ozempic person. He just looks like it. You can see it in his face. He's got Ozempic face. And there's something off about it. The shortcut I think is probably bad for you. Like I think that's commonly known that these drugs like that are bad for you, but it's the act of just, you don't change your behavior and you continue on the bad behavior. It's not going to get you to where you want to be. You're not going to be, a really attractive person by cheating. And there really is something to this meme of proof of work. Like you put the work in and you build competency, you build character. And I think it's important. It is important to do that. Like hard work is important. Like, there's a lot of people that are lazy and entitled. I'm not lazy or entitled. I know that like the things I have in my life I've worked for, and the things I want to have, I'm going to work for. And I'm going to work my ass off to get there. And, the rest of the population, being lazy and entitled is just, once again, it's an opportunity for me, to be successful. I think, I want to surround myself not with people that are lazy and entitled to feel better about myself. I want to surround myself with people that are hardworking, creative, intelligent, in order to, reach my fuller potential. Because, people like that, even if they're competition directly to what you're doing, they're gonna push you forward instead of bring you back.
And
And
and they're a great resource as well. People like that are always, whether it's your network, whether it's advice, whether it's ideas. It's incredible to have someone like that around you, as opposed to some slovenly you know person that just wants to get on whatever designer drug to try to cover up their terrible life decisions.
yeah,
I don't. It's. We were talking earlier about how people in your life are going to see that you're looking better, you're feeling better, you're doing better financially, and eventually they'll come around and start saying, "How has that happened?" And that's certainly happened in my life. But I don't understand, back to psychological conundrums and things I can't figure out. I it, my life has gotten just so much better since I took control of it, since I took control of my diet, took control of my money, um, checked out of pretty much all television, started reading a lot more, really got back into my faith and putting much more of an emphasis on that instead of just kind of living for myself and for all these worldly things. I, like life has gotten so much better. I have a hard time understanding why people want to continue. They know they feel like shit. They know they look like shit. They know everything sucks, but there's like something where they don't want to get out of that. They don't want to improve. And that one, I can't figure that out.
Well, there's been something that's been described, for a very long time in human history. Like I think it goes back to Plato's allegory of the cave. And I think what do they call it? The familiarity fallacy or something like that.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I
Where
didn't read Plato's Allegory of the Cave. I'm sure I did, but I forgot it. So, I probably, amongst me espousing all my thoughts about reading, I probably should read that one. So,
it's a good one. Yeah, I mean, just to summarize it, so there's a cave. It's been a while since I read it too. I reference it a lot, but there's like this image, this meme that I like to, propagate of the cave that somebody did, uh, where you essentially have a bunch of people like sitting in chains, looking at a wall inside of a cave, and behind them's a fire, and people are doing like,
yeah. I know what you're talking
they're doing like the finger puppet or shadow
about.
puppets on the wall,
Yeah.
and like the people sitting there in chains think that's the realities. One of the guys breaks out of the cave, realizes there's whole world out there. He goes back in, tries to tell them, they don't want to leave. And I think it's very similar to what we're dealing with. But you see it all the time. Like, people pass up awesome opportunities. They get stuck in jobs. They don't want to leave. They choose not to start businesses, and be self-employed. They because there's a desire for stability and comfort that oftentimes uh overrides the desire for success. And like I think part of why this is so widely a thing is because we have so many bad examples. You look at the media and the people that are promoted in our culture and our society, like a lot of them aren't that impressive, and they're not good examples. You look at the way that relationships are depicted in movies, you look at the topics of what's in music, what's being shoved down people's throats with algorithms. It's just like bad example after bad example after bad example. And so I think people's uh their their understanding of what is good and virtuous is miscalibrated.
I mean, I don't think you can argue that at all. And really, the only question is it on purpose or for some sort of nefarious means, or is it just this is easy drivel to pacify the masses and keep them drooling in their seats, a la idiocracy?
Well, I think it's both. I think one of the common things that drives me crazy is people like to assign incompetency to malice frequently. And I think it's important to understand a lot of these people are malicious.
Mhm.
Trying to determine what their goals or incentives are is difficult, and trying to understand people that are malicious, especially if you're not a malicious person. If you're not a psychopath, it's hard to understand a psychopath. It's one of their advantages that they have. But at the same time, like I think a lot of the people that are working in these mediums, propagating these messages that are really just like unhelpful and depraved and discouraging, they have very low opinions of themselves. And so a lot of the stuff that they're showcasing are just reflections of how they feel about themselves and the world around them and the decisions that they're making in their own lives. Like I don't think like going and hurting children is reflective of you feeling good about yourself.
No, it's
I
coming
don't
from a
think
place of darkness and sadness.
I think a lot of it comes from like a place of self-hatred.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them that are doing things like this, they're acting out. A lot of them almost definitely were also victimized when they were children. So and the problem with, victimizing children is it informs
The
their,
one problem with victimizing children.
well, I think there's a lot of problems with it, but I think it's important to, I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, like the actual impacts of it and the way that it forms people's views of themselves and influences their identities. It's like, why do you have so many people that are confused with who they are right now? It's because their very identities are being constantly attacked. And when you do it sexually, um, it's one of the hardest, because you can't just turn off your sexuality. You know what I mean? It's something that's innate in who you are as an individual. And when you destroy that sense of self as a child, uh you really just destroy um their ability to view themselves. And a lot of times, like, it is violence. It's a uh what's it, violation of who the individual is. It's a severe boundary crossing, and it's a lot bigger than just like, the physical act of molesting. A lot of it has to do with, like, the themes that are broadcasted to children, um the way that it's discussed. There's so many ways. Why is something that's so fundamentally a part of who we are so universally distorted everywhere? It's a really important question to ask that I don't see a lot of people uh, asking. I don't want to, be the arbiter over, like, I've got a view of, like, what I think sex for me should look like, but I don't want to be the arbiter for anybody else. But it's pretty easy to see the destructive nature of this stuff. But the people that are propagating these things typically themselves were also abused, and they're just kind of role playing over and over again. Uh,
Well, I mean,
these
that's part of the whole point of this, right? Is that's the sort of the boarding school. It's to break these people, and then they go on to do the bidding of. I mean, it's a very thick and insular sort of group of people that want to hold on to power, and the way to do it is to break the person underneath them, because then they can't stand up for themselves, and then it's easy to wield power over those people and have them wield power. And uh, Daniel Prince, I know you were just on his podcast. He and I talked about this with Winston Churchill. That's exactly what happened to him. He went to a boarding school. He was sexually broken, and then he was a puppet for all the interests that we all know and love in terms of fomenting war and really making World War II happen when it probably didn't need to, or certainly not on the scale that it did. So this is all part of the plan. And to your point, there is something so important to us about sexuality. It's almost like it's it's just on a different level of things that have impact on your life, and and not treating it with reverence, not treating it like something to take seriously, and treating it kind of like a joke to throw around willy nilly or push onto little kids. I was watching something on ESPN, and there's like 5-year-old kids running around shooting these giant guns with like white goo coming out. It was objectively disgusting. And I turned to my wife and I said, "Hon, are you seeing this? Like, this is appalling." And she started to feel uncomfortable. She's like, "I wish you didn't tell me this was on there." I mean, like, and things like that. We're just not taking seriously the ramifications, or we are, and that's the whole point. Then you get to control people, and when you scramble their brains on something that's so personal and so intimate to someone's life, then you can kind of walk them around on a leash.
I think that's why it's so important to identify it and acknowledge it and call it out, but then also, like, try and take proactive measures to get away from it.
100%.
because one of the challenges is other people probably aren't going to call it out. And I think in a lot of ways, it brings a sense of karmic responsibility when you don't consent. Because I think this is something I'm working on a series right now talking about karmic credit default swaps. And just karmic debt in general and karmic credit. And this is like one of those themes you hear a lot about on conspiracy podcasts, is like the reason why the depraved people allow at least some people to talk about the depraved things that they're doing is they feel like it absolves them karmically for the misdeeds, because the general population, it knows, like, you poll anybody right now, they all know about Epstein.
Yeah.
Every NPC in the country knows about Epstein. They know that there's a good chance that somebody that they voted for is a pedophile, and yet they're doing nothing about it. Like, what does that mean for? I think the people that are engaging in these things, that they believe that they're absolved of the responsibility because the general population knows about it, and they're just embracing it or ignoring it, or
keep voting for
whatever.
them.
Yeah, voting for them
Again,
donating their political campaigns.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's another part of what you're talking about, is that's why they show these little public symbols and oh, you're crazy. That wasn't a sign of Satan. It's like, no, they're doing this to let you know that this is what they're into, and then you don't do anything about it, and that's more absolution for them.
I think part of it too is there was a case that I learned about listening to Daryl Cooper I think it was in Belgium, where there was a big high profile case of sexual exploitation of kids, where kids were like tortured and starved to death. And, the guy that was doing it was essentially let off, and like the whole country like freaked out. There were hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the street, and nothing changed. Like, what is the messaging that gives to the general population when they have that little control to actually influence anything? It just beats you down. It wears you out. It just makes you feel awful.
Well, that was all the COVID stuff too. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people in the street, at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, we're just going to fire you. We're just going to shut off your bank account. Yeah, sure. Great. Walk around the streets all you want. We don't care. You get that jab, or you're not showing up to your government contract job on Monday. You choose. There is no recourse. There was none. And that, I know exactly that case you're talking about. The guy, Nick Bryant, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but great author and journalist, talked a lot about that case and went into depth. And the thing that's so unique about that case, aside from the lack of political recourse, it was, as you said, it was so disgusting, so gross. I mean, this was the most unimaginable, heinous crimes that 99% of society just doesn't even think exist out there. And that was going on, and that's why there was such a massive backlash. But your point, nothing was done. So sorry to kind of cut you out there.
Oh, no, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, it's this isn't like a new and novel thing either. There's been documented cases of this type of stuff happening throughout the entirety of human history. And the ongoing, I think it's important to highlight like moral people that took stands against power. Like those are the true heroes. Like I think one of the things that is helpful, if we're going to be building a subculture that's actually, doing things that are productive and trying to be geared in a more like moral way that's more rooted in the truth, is we have to change who the heroes are that we worship, or not necessarily worship, but promote. Is it gonna be, these status figures that have done awful things. Like you look at Abraham Lincoln is promoted as the like greatest president in US history, or one of the greatest presidents in US history. Like there's never been a president that's killed more US citizens and done it. He did it in such a brutal way.
And for no
too.
reason. For no reason. I mean, that war
Mm.
never had to happen. That was an absolute abomination. You brought up something on your podcast with Daniel Prince where you said that everything is framed in terms of our history, in terms of the government and what the government was doing. And that is exactly what's going on with Abraham. Like, he kept the government together. Who cares? I don't care if the government fragmented into 13 states. Why do we care what happened to the national government, the union? Like, that's so ridiculous. Why was that? Why is that a virtue that we all, you know, stuck together and are some sort of amalgamation where we have power in DC telling people in Montana what to do, or lobbying efforts from New York and California displacing people in the middle of the I mean, the system we've created, this country is a disaster for many, many people. And it's completely unfair because you can't have centralized representation of such a massive decentralized landmass. And I agree with you. Like, how did we turn Lincoln into this historical great person? What came of it? The savior of the United States government was an absolute abomination.
Yeah. I think one thing, so like, there's probably somebody listening to the podcast right now that's getting, a little bit offended by these ideas because their understanding of history is being challenged. And like when I'm describing the United States to people, because like the myth that we've been indoctrinated with so thoroughly is the United States is the greatest country in the world because we're so free and have democracy and whatever. The Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. There's like these myths which we stand on. And it's like the reality is the United States is the capital city in the Hunger Games. And part of the reasons why things are so great here is because all the other outlying districts are being pillaged monetarily.
Yeah,
you look at all these other countries, they're all just getting bent over and fucked by the United States. And there's a responsibility on the individuals living here as a result of that. Like they can feel like they're not individually complicit in it, and try and offload the responsibility for all the things that they're supporting, all the death and destruction. The United States is the most violent government, currently in scale. The millions of people that have been killed as a result of the U.S. government's actions.
I would say in history, it's the most violent government. I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Soviet Union was.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Was pretty. Yeah. I mean, if you're just calculating numbers, I don't know.
Oh yeah, you got Mao's China. You got some crazy other some outliers there. But I mean, I guess more in terms of international, like outsourcing the death and destruction. USSR, China, Mao's China, like Cambodia, that was all internal destruction. Like we've done the most external destruction, I think, of any nation in history.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it takes to be a superpower. You look at how ruthless the British were.
Yeah.
When they were in charge of the world, the other Spain, Portugal, just absolutely ruthless. And that's what it takes. When you look at a government, the government is just whoever's in charge is the most powerful criminal organization. That's how it always works. And there's different ways to essentially pacify the population, get their buy-in. One of the ways is just like over the top coercion, kind of like North Korea. Another way is to take control of the education system and convince everybody that they're free because they get to vote. and get their buy-in through brainwashing and very sophisticated controls over information. Yeah, you're free, but like you're not.
Yeah, except
You're
you
free
owe
until
half your
you
money
do.
to the government, or you want to bring your
Yeah.
dog on the beach or smoke a cigarette in a park. Then you're not so free. Or you want to petition your government for redress. LOL.
Yeah.
I mean, we have surveillance cameras everywhere, and there's absolutely no way we can stop it. There's no way to bring Fourth Amendment lawsuits. There's no challenge we can bring to get rid of these cameras. We just have to be surveilled. We have no recourse. You can talk about free country all you want, and you know I love the U.S. I like it here. I think we have quote unquote more freedom than many other places, but we aren't anywhere close to any semblance of a true free nation.
I love the U.S. I absolutely love the U.S. I love the history of the U.S. and the way I look at the history is it's not about the government. It's about the people that live here. The U.S. is a country where people have come and fought over and over again. You look at the history of immigrants coming to the United States. That whatever the new immigrant class was, they were the underclass. The Italians were considered black people for a long time, and they were just treated like they're awful. The Chinese people, or Asians in general, are the most successful demographic in the United States today. And they were treated worse than slaves building the railroads for a long time, and were just like restricted for they fought their way into the positions where they're at. That's the story of the United States. There's a long history of non-compliance, of people wandering out into the wilderness and building their own. There's like some of my favorite stories are the stories of the Native Americans, like Chief Cochise and Geronimo, that took on the whole U.S. government with like no resources and held their ground. These Chiricahua Apaches out in Arizona, like this is why I think Skull and Bones has Geronimo's skull, and they deface it because they are it is going in a conspiracy rabbit hole. But yeah, I mean, like all the U.S. presidents that went to Yale, like Bush, and did weird sex things with the skull of Geronimo, like they're actively trying to disrespect that very nature of the non-compliance of the American spirit of the people living here, because Geronimo is an epic legend in standing up against tyranny. And I think those are the types of stories that are special to me. People like Lysander Spooner, who was like a true abolitionist. Like if you or again, if the thing that's attractive to you about the Civil War and about Lincoln was the abolition of slavery, like Lincoln didn't really give a shit about that. Like, but people
Quite the
like
opposite.
Lysander Spooner did.
Yeah, he was quite pro-slavery, or you know, not. I shouldn't say pro-slavery. He was quite pro-white superiority. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's like a whole new. I haven't actually read this book. Rod Palmer was telling me about it. Like, I love Hayek. I've read a bunch of Hayek, but I haven't read this. But he's telling me The Fatal Conceit. Have you read that one by Hayek?
I haven't. I've read a bunch of Hayek, but I haven't read that.
Yeah. Well, we're both going to talk about a book we haven't read, but Rod Palmer was telling me, one of the ideas and the premises of the book was, the fatal conceit that like everything comes down to, focusing on the government. This idea that we've been talking about, when in reality it's all the people. Like, you look at the economy and everybody wants to like blame the economy on Trump or Biden or whoever else, but like, who's the economy at the end of the day? It's all of us. We're the economy, the people working and providing value in the world. and those people in government are just inhibiting that in every way that they can, by throwing curveballs, by creating market manipulations, by picking winners and losers. They're actually destroying the value. That's the only thing the government could do, is destroy value. They don't provide value economically whatsoever. And like, this is I think the selling point for Bitcoin, corporations to businesses, which you've been talking about a lot, is you have to protect yourself from these people. Like, guess what? You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. They brought the war to your doorstep. They're debasing the currency. They're making it harder for you to produce value, to be successful. They're actively making things unsafe for you to operate. And you have to do something about it. You have to protect yourself proactively. And Bitcoin's one of the most effective ways to do that.
And you could wake up any day and you may just not have access to your bank account. And it could be because the government said so. It could be because of some clerical error. I mean, it could be anything. Like, you have to have an alternative. And to your point, the only thing the government does is siphon off money and put it into unprofitable and unproductive ventures. I don't know. This story went kind of under the radar, and I only heard about it because I listened to the Adam Carolla podcast. Kind of my one non-Bitcoin podcast I listen to, and he always makes me laugh. And I don't agree with him on everything, but he's a funny guy, and I always enjoyed his witticism. But he had Rick Caruso, who was the guy who was potentially going to be the mayor of LA. He ran against Karen Bass, who was just an absolute, no nothing, just typical, just absolute university plant, know nothing. And he was talking to Rick about how Rick Caruso's a developer, a property developer, very well known, built a lot of stuff, very wealthy guy, very successful. And none of his properties burned to the ground. And he was asking him how that was possible. He goes, well, I have my own fire department. I pay people to actually be a fire department for me. I save money on insurance for doing it because they're better than the actual fire department in the city. And it's just a no-brainer. And look at all my buildings are still standing. So, like, even the noble services that we're told we have to get from the government, fire departments, police departments, road builders, even that, if you just paid for it on your own, you would be better off. You would be in a much better position. And Stafadine quoted some stat at the end of his book. I forget exactly what it was, but it's over half of the security forces in the U.S. are private security. So the police aren't even servicing half of. They don't even have a 50% utilization rate. So, like, how could you possibly say that we need these services? Like, I mean, and then it's always, oh, well, the poor people would be able to afford. Well, what if you let the poor people keep like 30% more of their money, or they didn't have to pay property taxes or income tax, or the business didn't have to, and so their margins were compressed? What about all those things? Maybe, just maybe, if the money was able to flow through society like it was supposed to, people could actually pay for products and services where the service being delivered on the other end actually has an incentive to produce for you, other than just altruism, because that's basically what we're relying on. We're saying, well, just people are generally good, therefore they'll protect you or put out your fire or whatever. And we're just finding out more and more it's not the case. We would be much better off keeping 50% more of our paycheck and paying for these things ourselves.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, you're seeing it more and more. You walk into a gas station and there's a guy standing there with a bulletproof vest. Looks like they call him, or I call him, mall ninjas. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But they're actually like former military that are actually trained to handle someone
Sometimes.
Well, sometimes, yeah.
Some,
Other times they're definitely just a plant. They're like a fence with the door handle on the other side that you just got to reach over if you really wanted to get through. But
they're guys a lot. I think a lot of times these private security guys, they're guys that watch like a lot of like John Wick movies.
oh
And
yeah,
they want their job to be standing at Quick Trip with a gun on their hip and a bulletproof vest. And I mean, you can kind of tell a difference between them. It's like the ones that are over the top. They're like wearing berets or, they're just, they're a little bit out of shape.
yeah. They've been snacking too much on the actual 7-Eleven product and not taking care of. They've been taking advantage of their free meal on their ship way too much.
They're on a lot of these guys are on power trips. Like they just want authority over somebody else. And the private security is the way that they did it instead of just becoming a cop.
Yeah, and
But yeah,
is that any worse or any better than what these police were dealing with anyways? I mean, I don't know.
well,
Yeah.
what it comes down to at the end of the day is like I don't think there's any like silver bullet to magically fix everything. Like there's trade-offs to everything, and at the end of the day you as an individual need to be responsible, like either in a system where there's a coercive monopoly on violence or there's a free market for violence. You as an individual need to be thinking about your own best interests. You need to be protecting yourself. You need to be thinking about other people adversarially, because there are dangerous people, and it's your responsibility to protect yourself at the end of the day and your family, not somebody else's. And you can pay for the protection, which I think you and I agree that is much more moral than being coerced in a racket where they come and take your shit or arrest you if you don't pay them protection money. But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I've been thinking about this, like I think Bitcoiners in general, we are susceptible to utopian thinking.
I 100% agree. I totally agree. There's way too many people out there that that think all of a sudden we fix the money, we're going to be living in some sort of utopia. There's going to be no poverty, and we're not going to have a Pareto distribution amongst society and people clamoring for other people's stuff. I mean, we're going to have all the same problems. We because we're humans, and at the end of the day, the human spirit is not going to be defeated by better money. We'll have way better incentives. People will be able to protect their wealth much easier and make it more difficult for theft and robbery. And a lot of the problems will be lessened. And obviously, the detrimental effect of inflation and stealing from everyone will be stilted. But we're never going to defeat the battle between good and evil in humanity. That will exist forever.
Yeah. I think utopian thinking is important in a lot of ways. Because you look at, like, I was listening to you talk at BTC Prague, and you were describing kind of getting sucked into the utopian thinking of like wanting to convince everybody, like, hey, I found this like magic bullet that's gonna, like fix everything. And I think a lot of us experience that, where we get super excited about this technology. It truly is revolutionary. But the utopian thinking is that oftentimes the catalyst that gets us interested in the first place. And if an image was presented that things just marginally get better, it wouldn't be as exciting. It wouldn't get our buy-in. But it's like this meme that fix the money, fix the world. While it's not realistic, it oftentimes is the catalyst into action, which is interesting to think about. Like, I think every revolution in general is driven by this utopian thinking. You look at the Bolshevik Revolution, and why people were getting so excited about it, because not everybody was just like a bloodthirsty Bolshevik communist. There was a lot of like anarchists that were supporters of that movement against the czar. that completely got hoodwinked. They got bought into this utopia and idea of equality for the worker. And, they were taken advantage of. And I think it's important, like once you get past that initial excitement to really think critically about the things of like, we're at this point where Bitcoin is getting the mass adoption. So the Epstein client list is speaking at Bitcoin conferences. They're going on podcasts now. We're probably going to start hearing murmurings of Diddy parties happening, in this Bitcoin ecosystem. All the horrible stuff, all the corruption, all the depravity, is going to be merging with this ecosystem, with this movement, and not everything's good. And Orange Coin is it's beyond Orange Coin is just good at this point. Like there needs to be or it's beneficial to have critical thinking of like, okay, who am I supporting? Why am I supporting it? What types of information am I supporting? What type of messaging am I promoting? Am I actually like I saw a tweet this week which is really funny, which we were talking about how shitty the United States government is. Somebody was tweeting that the only people buying treasury companies now are stable coins. So who's propagating the U.S. empire and all their global endeavors of domination, subjugation? It's the stable coin companies, the crypto industry. And like the Bitcoin ecosystem is a huge part of that. Like one of the jokes about the last conference was that it was a stablecoin conference. I forgot who on Twitter did the mashup of all the stablecoin mentions, but there's a lot of Bitcoiners that have gone from Bitcoin only to Bitcoin and stablecoin only.
Well, Bitcoin
only,
stablecoin only, and Bitcoin treasury only.
Yeah,
they got to get their paper Bitcoin too.
And I don't think that stable coins are inherently bad. I think that's
they're a digital dollar. They're just an extension of the piece of crap we have to use now, and it's just better tech dollar.
It's all very nuanced, and that's a difficult thing is wading into the nuance of everything. Of like I think there was this big posturing of like, oh, we'll never use CBDCs. We refuse. And like, if they had chosen to push CBDCs, almost all of us would have been using CBDCs.
Oh yeah. Well,
and there's a lot.
Well, and what if they airdrop you like 1,000 USD CBDCs? Are you the only place you can spend it is at the grocery store? Are you really going to like try to find some black market and exchange it for Bitcoin? Or are you just going to go buy 3 times worth of groceries and like use your stupid coins they gave you? Like, I'm guessing 99% of society would just go, well, I get 3 free trips to the grocery store. Let's do it.
Well, you can predict on what you would do in the future situation by what you're doing today. To the extent that you're opting out today is the extent that you'll probably opt out in the future. And like, I think that's one of the important, because there's this constant like image that's being presented by the Bitcoin ecosystem that we're getting further and further away from freedom, and that the walls are going to close in at some imaginary point in the future. And like, it is a real possibility, but I think one of the dangers of that type of messaging is it discounts all the stuff that's happening today, like the surveillance that's happening today. Like, guess what? Every time you have your cell phone in your pocket, you're talking to somebody in person, you're essentially having a Bitcoin podcast recorded that, either one of the apps on your phone is collecting, or the NSA or some intelligence agency somewhere that's probably planting some sort of malware that's undetectable on your cell phone, because they're essentially, it's like every internet connected device. You go into a stranger's home and they have a Google Nest or an Amazon Alexa. Is like, guess what? Now you're having a Bitcoin podcast, but you don't have access to it. They do. which you would think we'd be orange pilling, the people working there, but unfortunately not the case.
Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe we are orange pilling them, and then they're seeing their jobs go bye. So then they're trying to, they're getting the alpha, and they're trying to take advantage. They want to be early movers in combating the alpha.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's important to call all this stuff out. It's important to move and walk away from it, and it all comes down to there's consequences to all these actions. There's consequences. Like if you want a better future for your kids, I think it's pretty easy to determine that giving these people more power and control over their lives, that the power is not going to be wielded in the best interest of your children. They're going to try and exploit your children. They're going to try and take more away. They're going to actually make things more unsafe. And I think a lot of the boomers are coming to this realization that the trade-off of trying to choose convenience and safety is biting them in the ass. Like the last days of their lives, they're going to watch society crumble. They're going to watch the cities become unsafe. They're going to watch institutions just be, collapsing, demolishing, and they're going to be watching their kids struggle and be really unhappy. Like a lot of parents, a lot of boomers that decided that a timeshare was more important than being present in their kids' lives are going to watch their kids like struggle with drug addiction and suicide. And, there's consequences to this shit. It's not like you can just take your responsibility, offload it on somebody else and get away without any sort of repercussions. Like there's repercussions to every decision that we make. If we see something that's wrong and we ignore it and kind of fall victim to the bystander effect, there's going to be repercussions for that. There is no way to get through life without taking responsibility and like thinking that it's going to work out well. If we're not the ones doing this, then probably nobody is.
Well, and the other thing too is it all builds on itself, right? Like every time you don't stand up, every time you don't do something, every time you don't do the right thing, it just becomes easier and easier, and you've just rationalized everything. I mean, I remember during COVID mania when my wife and I just said we're not going to take this jab, and we're just not going to do it. We were both prepared to be fired, and from that point forward, we basically said we were kind of prepared to lose everything. But at least we said no. At least we went with our conscience. And now, every decision like that goes against society, where you have people in your ear telling you to do one thing, or oh, you're crazy for believing in God, or oh yeah, your ridiculous meat diet, or whatever it is, it just becomes easier and easier and easier to say, I don't care. Like this is the choice I'm making, and feel free to think I'm nuts. I don't really care. And those decisions have consequences. They build over time. And I'm not perfect. Trust me. I have capitulated to things that I look back and wish I didn't. And there's all sorts of mistakes we make along the way, and no one's perfect. And I'm certainly not trying to hold myself up as some sort of paragon of virtue or anything like that, but just to emphasize the point that whatever pattern of decisions you're making, to your point, what decision you're making today, that's the decision you're going to make in the future, because you're headed down a path of continuing to make those decisions, and they just build on each other, decision after decision after decision.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Richard, we've gone an hour and a half. We could probably go 2.5 hours. I know we're probably not going to reach the 40 hours in this one rip, but at least we'll do some damage. I do want to talk a little bit, since we are supposed to be talking about integrating Bitcoin into businesses and how people are using it. I love your framing of the government brought the war to you. Like the war is on your doorstep. We didn't start the fire, if you will. We're just trying to protect ourselves, pushing back. This is a message that I have for every business, that you don't have a choice. You have to adopt Bitcoin or you will be destroyed. The ever classic Thevenin analysis or metaphor of gunpowder. Yeah, use your swords. You're just going to get shot by cannons and rifles, and that's not going to work out well for you. That's the situation we're at. We talked at the beginning how you left your fiat media job and are doing stuff at the Bugle now and doing some other things. So talk a little bit about how you're integrating Bitcoin into your businesses, how it's helped your businesses, whether it's through audience or treasury or whatever, and maybe just the importance it's meant for you and for Rod and the Bugle in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Bitcoin's, so we're operating based on the value for value principle at the Bugle for the most part. And I think we're going to compromise a little bit on that in some circumstances. And the primary one is when we throw live events. And part of the reason why is because live events are so expensive. But what's really important, I think, for our content is to be value for value, meaning that we directly monetize from our audience. And it creates better incentives, in my opinion, to create better content, because we're competing, or we're trying to make the best possible content to extract the most value from our audience. And the only way that I think we can do that is by convincing them that our content is good enough for them to deal with difficult UX in order to pay us. We do that through things like the Fountain app and podcasting 2.0.
So why do you say that? Why do you think there's difficult UX? I personally have found it to be pretty easy. Are you just, is that because I'm a Bitcoiner and I know how to use Bitcoin, and you're just talking to a lot of your audience doesn't know how to use it? I think it's pretty seamless, but you tell me.
Well, I mean, it's just when you compare it to the alternative. So like, I mean, a lot of the alternatives have bad UX. So like I was trying to get logged on Patreon to pay Stardust, and they wanted me to KYC, and they kicked me off the platform because I didn't want to KYC. And this is to send somebody like $50 a month or something like that, which is insane to me. Like, why do I need to KYC for that? That's retarded. You know, I was using like Proton email and like a fake name, and like, or not a fake name, but like, you know, a pseudonym, and like they kicked me off the platform. You know, and part of the reason why is like they want to control the information, and they want to know who's sending people money for what. And it's super problematic. Like the thing that one of the most notable media organizations in history was WikiLeaks, that had a massive outsized impact that in a lot of ways like played a role in destroying this myth around American innocence, and showed that the American government was perpetuating awful war crimes. And they exposed financial crimes. They exposed all sorts of stuff. They exposed that the democracy that we have been taught is sacred really isn't, that primaries are getting rigged, that there's a lot of seedy stuff that's happening behind the scenes, that I think if you're paying attention, you could see it all, but it's different when they have the evidence beyond just like, you know, you watching with your eyes. Like they have the actual documentation of what's going on. And they would have not been able to accomplish what they were able to accomplish had Bitcoin not existed, because all the payment rails to support WikiLeaks, like once they started actually stirring the pot, you know, they were kicked off the Visa network, off of PayPal, off of everything. And they were able to use Bitcoin. And I think that's incredibly important going forward, because we saw this with the trucker protest in Canada. We see all these things. Like information is one of the most valuable commodities in the world. This is what Peter Thiel gets with Palantir. That's why he's always trying to collect so much information on everybody. But like for the general population, information is valuable for you because you have to make the correct decisions. If you make an incorrect decision, if you put your money in the wrong thing, if you bought Ethereum instead of Bitcoin, or you bought, you invested in BitCloud, or whatever it was, a rug pull, uh, you're gonna end up in a bad situation. I've seen this happen over and over again. Like I've seen smart, successful people lose all their money, like trying to trade on some sort of DeFi platform that they don't understand because they're chasing yield, and they would have been way better off if they just bought Bitcoin. Like having accurate information in those situations and understanding the systems that you're playing with is really, really important and useful. And I think one of the only ways that we can get that is if individuals take an active role in the media environment, whether it's either propagating content like you are right now, or supporting content creators that are propagating stuff that they like.
So are you
And this,
so are you saying then the UX problem is more of sort of a fiat rail side of things?
no. I mean, like the apps that we're using, like Noster and Fountain, and like Fountain's okay, but there's always bugs and there's always issues dealing with the Lightning Network, especially if you're using it in a non-custodial way. Is a pain. I mean, I say this from an experience of like using it for a long time. It's difficult to do a lot. It's a lot of ways it's a lot more work. In some ways it's not, but part of the reason, like you look at the difference between something like Venmo and Cash App. So I know a lot of Bitcoiners are using Cash App right now instead of like Zeus Wallet. In Azteca. It's just easy. But guess what? You have to KYC your asshole, and you're just like fully in the system being surveilled. And it's in many ways, it's not that revolutionary or different just because you're using the Lightning Network, on Cash App. It's propagating a lot of the same issues, which is not just fiat money, but fiat authority. And the reason why a lot of people do that is because it's convenient, and I understand that. Like there's lots of decisions where I make the trade-off of convenience over like one of the most convenient things to do is just take sponsors as a media company. And one of the reasons why I don't want to do that, primarily for our content, is because I want to prove to the world that it's actually viable to do this. I want to build the market and convince enough people to participate in this market so that other people come into this market, and it genuinely has an outsized impact on the media ecosystem and the way that information is circulated. That there's been this big movement of like going direct to the producer. And I feel like this is very, very similar in the value for value economy, is going direct to the producer. Shake your podcaster's hand. But yeah, I mean, like you compare Twitter to Noster, like you're using Primal. Like Primal's made some big steps, but I've had issues with Primal the whole time. I've been trying to use it. It's been a pain. Like I prefer not to have a phone app, but now I'm using the phone app because the web app doesn't work.
The web app needs some work for sure. And you can't even find your wallet on the web app. Or I'm retarded, one of the two, or both.
Yeah, probably same for me. But like, it's just, there's like I'm looking at a Fountain. Fountain has done something really cool recently, which I'm super excited about. Which they have allowed you to do paywalls for content, and I think paywalls are incredible. And if you're an independent media person and you're wanting to monetize, like paywalls are one of the best ways to do that. And I think Bitcoin is a great way to use paywalls.
Well, that's what
especially with the Lightning.
That's kind of what I'm talking about. That's kind of how I'm using it, how I'm doing value for value. Even on Noster, if I saw an article I liked, I'll just find the post on Nostr. I'll just zap it, I'll send 5,000 sats or, whatever. Just a great article, appreciate it. Same thing with a podcast, someone posts on Fountain. So, and I mean, I am using self custody. I use Phoenix and I pay over that. And I've found it honestly to be completely seamless. It's amazing. I don't have to KYC anything. No one needs, no one even, uh, uh, no one even knows that I'm sending that other than me and the recipient. And I find the UX to be incredible. But
Well, there's definitely
as far as the payments
drawbacks.
go, yeah.
Yeah.
As far as just finding someone,
there's drawbacks that you'll eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, I think part of the reason, a lot of these platforms don't have good UX is you just look at the difference in like market size. Like the fiat value for value economy is huge. You've got Patreon, which has probably billions of dollars running through them. You've got YouTube super chats. You've got Substack. Spotify is doing subscriptions now. There's so many ways to engage in the value for value economy and support content creators. And I think if we can go to some of these biggest content creators and show them that we've built a market where it makes sense for them to participate in and that they can earn money.
All right, sorry about that. We got disconnected there. You were in the middle of talking about maybe taking untested medical treatments.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. Start talking about the vaccines and then your cycle or your power cycles.
Yeah, funny how that works, huh?
I
didn't put my phone on airplane mode, so maybe it was getting picked up.
Something like this happened when I was on the Daniel Prince podcast too. It was like start getting all ramped up on something, and then all of a sudden my technology magically stops working. But yeah, it's important to have these rails built out and have this marketing existing for if and when things get, you go on the defensive, like you do things like, for example, you own a firearm and you practice handling and shooting that firearm, not because you're expecting an imminent attack. Typically, if you're expecting an imminent attack on you or your family, it's more of like a reason to train more seriously. But you do these things because of something that hopefully won't happen. Like you prepare for, so like, why should you stockpile at least a little bit of food and water
and
ammo? It's like, well, we have so many documented cases of things like hurricanes and earthquakes and just power outages in general. If you understand the electrical grid a little bit, what happens if a substation transformer goes out? Those aren't easy to get your hands on. Sometimes it can take, months and months and months to get it. So it's important to, be thinking about things like this. And I think the same goes for the media ecosystem and the information ecosystem of like, we experienced this where Twitter shut down all dissent, YouTube shut down all dissent, Facebook and Instagram and every social media platform shut down all dissent and kicked anybody off that was propagating any semblance of truth for a long time. It's going to happen again. And the people that are propagating truth and dissenting in the situations can be completely deplatformed and taken out of the picture. And
the same thing goes for our money.
Yep. Same thing goes for the money. And so having like one of the best ways to prevent any sort of overreach or abuse is just to take away the ability to overreach and abuse. And I think the Bitcoin value for value ecosystem is, one of the best ways to do that for the flow of information is, the audience is engaged, they're engaged in the content, and they're the ones directly supporting it. Like you were saying earlier, we'd be better off if we just took our own money and funded a lot of these services. And I think information media is, it's the same exact thing. Like either we can rely on the subsidized media ecosystem, from the Epstein client list, or we can subsidize and fund the ecosystem that we want, that isn't, propagating and complicit, in a lot of these things that are happening, that are actively working against our best interest. And I think Bitcoin is the most interesting and the best way to do that, which is really what I'm trying to do with the Bugle. And I think one of the ways that we build this ecosystem is we create the best content in the world. And so that's what I'm striving to do with the Bugle, is to create the best and most interesting content in the world. And I think it's the best and the most interesting for people that are really immersed in this ecosystem. And I care about creating content for people that are immersed in this ecosystem, because I think the people that are immersed in this ecosystem are doing the most productive stuff. And I want to create content for the people that are doing the most productive stuff, not for, a bunch of people that, think that Netflix is good content. I don't really care about people in there.
It's also a way to ground yourself, to reinforce your convictions, to step out of this clown world. And it's like, I know clown world gets a lot of shade, and okay, doomer, black pill, whatever, but clown world exists. The doomer, black pill world exists. And the way out of that is to not participate in it, to as much of an extent as you can. Build the alternative systems, thrive in those systems. To your point, build within those systems, because that's what's interesting, that's what's important. And it is a refuge for people looking to step out of clown world. And, I'm a person of faith. I find stepping into Christianity, into a community of believers, is a massive shield against clown world. And but it's not the only one. And there's other places to go where you can be refreshed and renewed, and get yourself away from all the stuff you were talking about earlier, the poison, the constant negativity of relationships, of people, of families, of just constant feed of drivel nonsense negativity. Having a place to come to sort of, figuratively cleanse your soul is refreshing and rewarding, and we should absolutely be paying attention to and supporting the people doing that, and making sure that those people can continue to be supported and continue to make and produce the things that are adding value, that are adding joy, that are giving people the opportunity and the ability to take control of their own life back, and opt out of truly clown world.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, Richard. Well, I appreciate your time today. I apologize to the listeners and viewers if there's any technical drop off there, but as Richard mentioned, we started talking about the forbidden topics, and magically we lose connectivity. So, Richard, where do you want to send people to check out you personally, your business partner, your publication, your media? You're doing all sorts of stuff, not just the Bugle Weekly. So, kind of want to leave it open to you to have people to let people know where they can find all the work you're doing.
Yeah. Our website is bugle.news. That's a good place if you want to see the articles. Go to the About page, and we'll direct you a bunch of places there. But we're all over the place. I think we've got a great podcast. I like to say we have the most thermodynamically sound podcast in the world. Best place to listen to it is on fountain.fm. Go to your mobile app store, download Fountain, get buzzing away. You can earn Bitcoin by listening to podcasts, which is a pretty good deal. But even cooler, you can spend Bitcoin by listening to podcasts. Really, really easily. But I think like 90% of our listeners are on Fountain, which is really incredible. We're putting out a ton of, interesting content. We're doing, we do like a weekly news show, best credentialed journalists in Bitcoin discussing all the relevant Bitcoin topics. And then we have some other stuff that we're doing. We're doing an interview show. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm interviewing Otis Bittmeyer tonight. He is a coffee guy. He makes incredible coffee.
I know Otis. Yeah.
It's
part of like the homesteading crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an active participant in making the world better and on a variety of fronts, which is why I'm excited to interview him. He's a good father. He's a good husband. I met his family, met his wife. He's got a very wonderful wife. And it's cool to see them on mission together. Like one of the things, my favorite part of the interview of what you were talking about is describing like how you and your wife have been on the same page on a lot of these things. And I think that's so important and cool as an example to show people. And I think things like that get easily, like people kind of like gloss over things like that because they're focusing on other things like, oh, Brandon's the CEO of like this Bitcoin company. Like that's, you're a husband and now you're a father and you're trying to do those things well and right. And I think that's important because there's not a lot of good examples of that in the world. And like, you want to talk about like how you really change the world. It's those things that really matter in my opinion. So I'm excited for that interview tonight, but yeah, check us out on Fountain. Check us out. We're on Nostr, Bugle News on Twitter. We have a Telegram channel also called Bugle News and, YouTube channel. So it has like, I don't put a ton of effort into, but I don't do the open mouth thumbnails. So if you're looking for open mouth thumbnails, you can find that elsewhere. But yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff.
How am I gonna know what to do if the algo can't find the open mouth thumbnail?
Well, the best way to
myself?
defeat the algo, this is part of the reason why I think it's beneficial to have a Bitcoin podcast, is you can essentially become a network to promote people that wouldn't benefit from the algorithm, that would be penalized by the algorithm.
That's like almost to a T exactly what we're trying to do with this podcast, is highlight business owners who you may have never otherwise heard of, people using Bitcoin in their business to actually help their business survive. As you said, the war was taken to their doorstep. They're fighting back, and they probably never otherwise would be known about other than the opportunity. They're definitely not getting picked up in the YouTube algorithm, that's for sure. So love it. Just on our end, I'm BBAnon on Nostr. If you want to follow me, we have the official Sovereign account. That's Sovereign without the first E, SOVREIGN. Shirt I'm wearing. We're on Nostr. We're on X. We're on LinkedIn. So come find us on there. Additionally, me and another gentleman, Scott Lindbergh from Sovereign, are going to be speaking at the financial seminar going out in Denver, being hosted at the space. Thank you to the gracious hosts out there. It's October 16th through 18th. There's going to be a golf tournament. There's going to be a great conversation, great chance to network. If you want to come out and buy a ticket, use the code Sovereign to do that. And I hope to see you out there, and I think we'll have some good conversation. So, Richard, thank you so much for your time today, and hope everyone enjoyed this rip.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Brandon. It's a good time.
Absolutely.
It's always a good time talking about Bitcoin on podcasts.
No doubt. Always. Cheers.